If I asked you right now, on a scale from 1 to 10, how strong is your leadership brand? Most people would just guess, but you don't have to. We've created the Leadership Brand Assessment to give you an actual score on where you stand, your impact, your visibility, and the gap between those two. Because that gap, the distance between what you've built and what the world actually sees, that's where your influence is hiding, and that's where your income is hiding too. That's where your next opportunity is waiting. And it only takes 3 minutes. It's absolutely free, and it'll tell you exactly where to focus next. So take the assessment now at scoremyleadershipbrand.com. That season taught me that the version of resilience that we're handed, the one where you just bounce back or you push through, it is incomplete at best. Because sometimes the most courageous thing that you can do is to stop pushing, stop trying to bounce back, and start healing. In our culture, we worship recovery speed. How fast did you get back to work? How quickly did you hit your numbers? And it's almost as if our worth is being measured in how little time we take to be human. Release is where wisdom can really take root so that you're then ready to rebuild, to learn from what broke you so that you build better. And this is where growth happens. It's this rhythm that allows me to honor where I am right now while also acknowledging who I'm becoming without punishing myself for who I've been. And this isn't about productivity, it's about strategic alignment. It's about healing from a place of humility and not using success as this measure to try to keep all these plates spinning at once, when really, if we're honest, we probably only need to be carrying one plate at a time, right? And so I used to think resilience meant endurance. Now I believe it means alignment. And that's a shift that so many of us need. And I want to invite you into that shift. Welcome to the Let's Thrive Together podcast, where we are sharing real stories of real leaders thriving not only in their career in business, but also in your life. I'm your host, Brittany N, keynote speaker, author of Thrive Through It, and the CEO of Career Thrivers, where we work with executives and organizations to build bold leaders and resilient teams. So let's talk about resilience. It is one of those words that it gets thrown around a lot. We post about it. We take pride in it. We praise it. Some of us wear it like armor. But for me, when I think about resilience, it really became real for me in 2017 when my mom passed away. And I remember deciding to go back to work. I was living in New York at the time, and after all the services, the hustle and bustle, went back to the same desk, the same meetings, the same work. And everyone thought I was so strong for coming back. And I was, I guess, to a degree, or at least I looked that way, but inside I was unraveling. And that season taught me that the version of resilience that we're handed, the one where you just bounce back or you push through, it is incomplete at best. Because sometimes the most courageous thing that you can do is to stop pushing, stop trying to bounce back, and start healing. It's actually why I wrote my book, Thrive Through It, the second edition. And that book has become my love letter to anyone who's ever had to lead while grieving or ever had to build while you're bleeding. It is where I first began to really redefine resilience, not as stamina or even as speed, but as alignment with purpose, as authenticity, as courage, and as joy. Because resilience is not about bouncing back. It's about moving forward, but differently. I say differently because in our culture, we worship recovery speed. How fast did you get back to work, right? How quickly did you hit your numbers? And it's almost as if our worth is being measured in how little time we take to be human. There's some research from Gallup's latest State of the Global Workforce report that tells us that only 21% of people feel engaged at work. Manager engagement, people leaders, 27%. And that's not laziness, that's depletion. People are exhausted from pretending that they're fine. So when we talk about resilience, we're not just talking about grit. We have to talk about grief first, because even major change, even the ones that we choose, require us to let something go. And that includes your career, right? I know career grief intimately. Years ago, I remember turning down a major leadership opportunity. I spent 12 years at Pfizer. I got this incredible opportunity to lead the digital consumer marketing for the Viagra brand. And on paper, everything looked perfect. But when I got the relocation requirements, long story short, I ended up turning down the offer because my family needed something different. And the day I said no was the day I started to question everything. Was I throwing away my shot? Would people think that I wasn't ambitious enough? Did I not sacrifice enough? But what I learned later through that situation was that alignment can sometimes lead to this level of anxiety around our visibility, and we question what we truly want to do. And here's the truth. You can grieve an opportunity while still walking in what you believe is right. And sometimes we don't call those moments grief, but they are. Those are those quiet losses, right? When the job ended, the role changed, the version of you that you thought that you would be right now, you aren't, or the version of you that you used to be is no longer you. And so we have to be able to name that grief if we're going to find growth through it, right? And so that's why I created this framework called the Resilience Roadmap. My book is written around this, and it's a simple guide for leading yourself through these seasons of loss and transition, recognizing your grief, but moving forward with more than just grit, applying grace and growth. And the first step is recognition, right? You got to name what you've lost because you can't heal what you don't want to deal with. So sometimes that loss is obvious, like the death of a loved one. Other times it's hidden in identity shifts or career pivots or relationships ending or a dream being delayed, right? Then you have to release. You have to allow yourself to feel before you try to fix, right? We rush this part because pain makes us uncomfortable, especially as Americans, right? But release is where wisdom can really take root, so that you're then ready for the third R, which is to rebuild, right? To learn the lessons, to learn from what broke you so that you build better. And this is where growth happens, right? Not in avoiding it, but in acknowledging it. I often remind leaders that resilience isn't about returning to what's normal. It's about redesigning what's normal, even if it means letting go of what was. And if I'm being honest, this year, 2025, has been a rebuilding year for me. It's been the kind of year where God seemingly flipped over every single table in my life, from my marriage to my business, like everything rearranged to where I live, right? And so I've had to learn even a different level of resilience in this season as a business owner, regulating my pace of work, right? Having to stop comparing my past season of work, last quarter's revenue, right? This quarter of last year, right? Year over year revenue, and really stepping into what is the now season, right? What is what I like to call the grace pace? It's this rhythm that allows me to honor where I am right now while also acknowledging who I'm becoming without punishing myself for who I've been. And this isn't about productivity, it's about strategic alignment. It's about healing from a place of humility, right? And not using success as this measure to like try to keep all the plates spinning at once, when really, if we're honest, we probably only need to be carrying one plate at a time, right? And so when you think about just being honest with yourself, I want to share some questions that I've had to ask myself. What do I truly have capacity for right now? Quick question. Do you know the difference between a personal brand and a leadership brand? Most people don't, and it actually matters. Now, your personal brand is what people think about you. Your leadership brand, though, that's about the impact that you create. It's how you lead, it's how you think, it's your philosophy, the change that you're making visible in the world. I have a gift for you because each week I teach an absolutely free class called the Leadership Brand Class, where I walk you through our leadership brand methodology. We help you close the gap between the impact that you are already making in your career and your business and how visible that impact actually is. Because here's the truth. Visibility without substance is just noise. But impact without visibility, that's a missed opportunity. And most leaders that we work with are on the wrong side of that equation. So join me at leadershipbrandclass.com. It's free, it's every week, and it will change how you think about your leadership and how others think about you so that you're compensated for the impact that you actually create. What projects are aligned with my purpose, which I'm able to move from a place of purpose and not pressure? Who am I becoming in this new chapter? For me, as a single woman who still believes in love, who still desires marriage, who still prays about motherhood, who's choosing to heal while still being visible and showing up and still leading with integrity, like that's the real work of resilience. It's about self-awareness, and it's about choosing not to ignore your capacity and choosing to be brave for yourself versus this badge of burnout honor that sometimes we try to wear. And when I think about what this can look like when you are not only leading in business, but also leading inside of an organization, that additional stress can also show up in your body, right? And also show up in your leadership. So when we think about this next era of leadership, it's about emotional regulation, just as much as it is about strategic execution, right? And moving from this grace pace where you say, yes, I have these things that I need to get done, but when is the best time to do that? So I'm also managing my energy. Being able to say, I can't take that on right now without feeling guilty, right? It looks like believing in the path that you're on right now and recognizing that when you start to embrace grace pace, you start to notice that you move from a place of peace and not pressure. You begin to be more creative. Ideas start flowing, right? Not because you're doing more, but because you're finally aligning with your best yes, right? And so I used to think resilience meant endurance. Now I believe it means alignment. And that's a shift that so many of us need. And I want to invite you into that shift, right? And recognizing that that shift might mean it's time for a divine redesign, that you might be in a season where I can think about, all these plans that I had neatly mapped out for 2025 being reevaluated, not abandoned, right? But realigned. And in those quiet moments, I've had to realize that starting again is not the same as starting over, right? Starting again means you're beginning from a higher ground. You're more wise, you're more self-aware, you're more surrendered. One of my favorite passages of scripture is in Isaiah 43. It says, behold, I am doing a new thing. It will spring forth. Do you not perceive it? And sometimes that new thing requires you to release what you're used to so that you have the eyes to perceive it. It's not about perfection, but it's about being able to see more clearly because you have the capacity to actually acknowledge that maybe what I'm holding is no longer meant for me to be a plate that I'm trying to juggle, right? Versus holding the plate that's meant for you. And so that requires discipline, right? Which is probably one of the most underrated leadership skills, right? We talk a lot about growth and performance and execution, right? But we don't talk a lot about the discipline that's required for replenishment, right? Recovery is not passive. It is active commitment to protect your energy, your mindset, and your mission. There is a study from Harvard Business Review called Recovery as a Strategic Advantage. And in the study, they found that leaders who intentionally disconnect, even for a brief moment, return to work with higher creativity, stronger problem solving, and better emotional regulation. And that's not coincidence, right? That's you having the courage to say, hey, I need to unplug. I need to take a step back, right? Because you can't lead from your highest level spiritually, emotionally, physically, performance-wise when you're depleted, right? So yes, be excellent, but also be effective. And I have learned that you don't just schedule recovery, you have to truly design it for your life. Like knowing what restores you, knowing what brings you joy, knowing the best routine for your morning, knowing if it's a midweek or a midday walk, right? Getting outside, right? And sometimes it's about not having an agenda at all and going with the flow of that day, especially on the weekends, right? And so I just want to encourage you that if you're in a season of transition, if you're in a season where things feel like they are chaotic, there are clues in the chaos if you pause long enough to see the new thing that is springing forth and you're not busily trying to work through them to prove that you are strong. Because we are in this world that rewards constant movement, right? But rest is how you reclaim your humanity. Rest is how you resist the lie that your worth is tied to your work, because it is not. And you resist this fear that if you're not doing things, you'll miss something or things will fall apart, right? And you remind yourself, right? That there is a plan for your life. It is a purposeful plan. It is an abundant plan. It is a plan for you to prosper. It is a plan for you to work with grace, with rest. You're listening in to the Let's Thrive Together podcast powered by Career Thrivers. Career Thrivers is a workforce development and leadership branding firm where we work directly with organizations, helping you with your organizational development strategy, but also your learning and development as you are building your next level leaders. If you are looking to retain top talent, inspire your leaders, or cultivate the leadership brands as executives within your organization, then make sure you head on over to careerthrivers.com to learn more about how you can work with us. Resilience in this season looks a lot less like sprinting, maybe more like stretching, I would say, slowing down, listening to your life. What is your life telling you, right? Because your life is telling you things if you are listening to it. And that friction sometimes that we feel, like that's the data that we need to pause and really dive into, right? That white space, that uncomfortable gap between what was and what's next that you may find yourself in, like that truly becomes the place I have learned this year and in other seasons of massive disruption in my life. Like that's the place where your character is being fortified. That's the place where you are understanding strength that doesn't come from you. That's the place where you're learning what it means to have a routine of rest, right? That's the place where your results are grounded in reflection and rest and a real form of resilience that you can actually sustain. Right? So it's this combination of ensuring that you are reserving your best yes. Because here's how I think about it. You know, and people may feel differently, right? But I'm a growth mindset kind of person. There's no shortage of opportunities out here, right? But sometimes there is a shortage of peace. There is a shortage of people. Sometimes there's even a shortage of people, right? Relative to, exits in relationships, right? And even death. Right? As I shared with you that I experienced in 2017 with my mom. And so when I think about that, I think about, well, if I'm choosing to say yes to something, right? I don't just want to be productive. I want to be purposeful. I want it to be my best yes. And that means ensuring that my emotional and my mental well-being is at the core of my resilience, right? That I am healing and growing in real time. And when I look back over this year, I can honestly say that I would not have designed it this way, but I see God's fingerprint in every shift, every closed door, every delay, every disappointment, every place of insecurity, like every piece. I said, oh, God's hand was on that. Right? And even if I don't know exactly how it's going to pan out, part of belief, right? And grounding yourself in what you actually believe, like not what someone else has told you, not what, you've heard someone say, right? But actually what do you believe to be true, becomes really the ground, the soil, right? That sustainable seeds grow that help you move into the next season of who you're meant to become. So it may feel like everything is changing, right? But I want you to know you are not behind. You are not behind. You are being built, right? And as you are, for those of you who might be leading teams, right? Or building a business or leading through, again, more transition than you could have imagined, whether it's layoffs, right? Every thriving season has 3 ingredients: alignment, authenticity, and assignment. Alignment is asking you, is my rhythm sustainable? Authenticity is asking you, am I being honest about what I need right now? And assignment is asking you, what is my focus right now? And when you are clear on those 3 questions, you will experience peace that productivity and performance far outweighs, that they can't manufacture. And this is the work that we get to do at Career Thrivers. Like, this is what I think of and feel so passionate about when I think about leadership development, when I think about helping leaders understand, like I literally have it on my laptop right here. I'm called to help leaders to see themselves clearly so they can sustain what they're called to make seen. And I believe that that is about more than just what you can produce, what you can manifest, how much money you can make. It is about who you're becoming in that process. Like the now version of you doesn't need to prove anything. You don't need permission. You just need to be present, right? You need to be intentional. And resilience for this now version of you looks like honoring where you are, honoring your humanity, embracing your healing, trusting that what's meant for you is on its way to you, right? Trusting that you are allowed to change your mind, you're allowed to shift your strategy, you're allowed to slow down. And even in those decisions, you're still a leader. You're still chosen. You're still thriving, even in the midst of transition, right? And so how do you build that kind of resilience that lasts? I'll leave some questions with you, right? Question number one, or the next question, because I know I've asked you a few in this episode, right? So you probably got that journal out or that note section in your phone. But question number one, what am I grieving that I haven't given myself permission to name? Question two, what needs to be released so that I can make room for what's next? Question number three, what new rhythm will support the person I'm becoming? And then give yourself the grace to move one decision at a time, right? That's how you build resilience, through this rhythm of alignment. And that's really what it means to thrive through it. Before we close, I want to touch on something that's really been on my heart. I've kind of shared it on social media. If we're not connected, let's connect. But let's talk about healing, because I think sometimes we think that healing is a destination, as if it's somewhere that you arrive after you've read so many books or journaled for so long or prayed enough prayers or been through to enough therapy sessions. But what if healing is not a finish line at all? What if healing is an experience that you have as you keep moving forward? For a long time, I thought that I had to be healed before I could trust my heart to be open again, before I could dream again, before I could lead again. But I've learned that healing doesn't wait until you feel ready. Like healing meets you on the journey. And healing is what happens when you choose to keep going, when you choose to stay open, even after you've been disappointed, even when you still feel tender, even when you let people in that may have disappointed you, right? I believe that we heal through the love and support of other people, and that requires a level of openness and transparency, right? And so healing isn't something that you achieve, it's something that you receive. It is literally like the fruit of grace in your life. And God's design is not that we heal in silence or alone, but it's that we heal through each other. So I want you to know that you're still worthy of love. You can be heartbroken and still receive love. You can be in process and still be purposeful. And if you've been waiting until you quote unquote feel healed before you take the next step, I want you to hear me out on this. You are already walking in healing, not because you've earned it, not because you've proven anything, but because you are loved, right? Healing is not about getting to this place where nothing hurts anymore, but it's about living from a place of love, God's love and the love of his people, where that love can reach you, even the part of you that is still aching. And it's about believing I am healed, right? Not that I will be healed when. And that's where peace comes in. That's where grace lives. And that's also where I believe that thriving really begins. So I'll leave you with this passage of scripture that has been an anchor verse for me this year and in this season, right? Psalm chapter 34, verses 18, it says, "The Lord is near the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit." That is a promise. And that verse reminds me that even when life feels like the flip upside down table, like what is happening, right? That there is still grace and healing for you to receive as you're going. There is still grace working on the inside of you, right? So take heart, right? You've been through hard moments again before. This one may look different, right? And you will move through them again. So here's something for you to take into this week, kind of a grace-paced practice to maybe journal down, like what is one area of your life that needs grace pace, where you need to recalibrate. Maybe there's a habit that you need to release that's been rooted in survival and not sustainability, right? Or a way that you will choose to move forward in faith. Those small steps matter. You don't have to rush your recovery, right? You just have to be willing to start. So if this episode spoke to you, I want you to take a moment and to share it with someone who's learning to rebuild too, because you never know whose healing might continue to thrive with your vulnerability, right? And so I want to encourage you to share this with a coworker, a team member, a family member, a friend, and stay connected. We will be continuing conversations like this on this season of the Let's Thrive Together podcast. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.